The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
Very warm welcome to Squawk Box. I'm Steve Sedgwick with Karen Cho, and these are your headlines. It is not an April Fool's, I'm afraid. Wall Street has wrapped up its worst quarter in nearly 3 years. As President Trump's trade war fuels concerns the US could be headed for recession. And the world awaits for Mr. Trump's big trade reset as the White House announces a Rose Garden event to unveil its country-based reciprocal tariffs tomorrow.
French far-right leader Marine Le Pen vows to appeal after a French court finds her guilty of embezzling EU funds and bans her from public office for 5 years.
Let's be clear, I'm eliminated. But in reality, it is millions of French people who saw their vote eliminated.
And OpenA.I secures an eye-watering $40 billion in the largest private tech funding round in history.
Morning, how are you?
Morning, very well, thank you.
I do like this Monday off, Lark, I've got to be honest. It was glorious in the Sussex countryside
what's
yesterday.
better, Monday or Friday to have off?
Well, I mean, all over the world now, newscasters, and us included, trying to think of an April Fool's type pun. And there are so many things out there, you know, the market's falling aggressively, not April Fool's as well. The funding round from OpenA.I, is that an April Fool's? It was worth $157 billion in October. We've had a stock market correction since then, with technology stocks down aggressively, and it's doubled in value. Clever old SoftBank picking up that value, I would suggest.
There's a lot of stocks you could throw at the screen this morning for April Fool's. Nvidia, I mean, no one thought that was going to come to a screeching stop. And of course, we have in the first quarter Tesla, the complete U-turn here in terms of the performance of the company, how it's now seeing a buyer strike in some markets. Elon Musk all over that car, I think, in terms of badging and how people feel about buying it. And then, of course, there was the CoreWeave IPO the other day and what that says for private markets now.
What's with all those morons attacking the cars? If you don't like it, don't buy the car. Don't attack the showrooms. That's illegal, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, let's move on. US markets quarter to date. It was horrible across the board. The S&P 5.75% lower. The Nasdaq 8.2%. The Dow off by 4.2%. But as Karen just mentioned, the pain was felt in the technology.
You've left me all the fun stuff to rake through for the first 3 months of the year. This is the technology performance, and you can see Microsoft, one of the big AI names, down to the tune of about 5.5%, but they're selling really ramping up for Meta. And again, these were darlings of the market last year, down close to 14% for the first 3 months. Apple reversing aggressively, the China problems, tariffs, some of the issues, as well as its AI ambitions being kicked out into the long grass. Nvidia, the real star of the markets in recent years, also hammered by double digits. Google down to the tune of 9%. And interesting, even into the end of the quarter yesterday, there was more selling for some of these names. Let me show you Tesla in particular, because this was one of the companies, a big momentum name that investors have really turned away from. And don't forget, it's a series of different factors here. It's that buyer's strike for some quarters because of the political leanings of Elon Musk. It is also a problem with competition coming from China, other international markets. And what you're seeing here, the company, yesterday it was down intraday, but over the quarter down 11.5%. So certainly a rough old ride for Tesla, but many other stocks as well.
Oh gosh, this isn't just, anyone who tries to say this is just about certain tariff stocks, or this is just about what's going on with the technology re-rating, they're wrong, unambiguously wrong. Across the board, other markers, such as the Russell 2K, which is, bear in mind, not vastly known for its technology stocks or its tariff exposure, was down 9.8% in the quarter. It is 18.4% off its record high. The Dow Transports, 7.2% in the quarter. So for anyone to typify this it's a re-rating for technology and it's just about the tariffs. That is plain wrong. The sentiment indicators remain awful across the board. As you and I have both said previously. The hard data isn't actually that bad. The hard data is really, really robust at the moment. It's just a question of whether that sentiment data really comes home to roost. If it does, let's be brutally honest about it, chances of recession are going to go through the roof.
But the Russell 2K was looking well placed last year. It was finally seeing a little bit more interest with the diversifying across the US stock market. And the view is that if we're having a stronger economy under Trump, then some of the small cap stocks would benefit as well. But now we're talking about whether it's recession, stagflation, the macroeconomic story is getting worse as far as many people, many economists see it. And that, of course, takes the shine off those small cap stocks. To what is fascinating to me has been the aggressive selling from February that's really ramped up into March for technology names. And the ARK Innovation Fund, Cathy Wood's a big venture here, down to the tune of 16% in the quarter. Semiconductors, and this is the area, the picks and shovels, where investors right throughout 2024 want to be positioned, down 12.5% in the quarter.
Look, Cathy Woods is an extraordinary woman. She's an amazing businesswoman in many, many ways. But she's either stunningly right on her big calls or she's going to be stunningly wrong, isn't she? I mean, Tesla, I know, can you get the Tesla up again? What is it, about $250 at the moment? I lose track. But the truth of the matter is, she thinks this stock is going to be worth $2,600 or something quite extraordinary from here. She's either going to absolutely nail it on robo-taxis or it's going to be a massive fail. And I think she's one of those lightning rods for the broader market as well. I actually kind of want to move beyond just the technology and that and just say, look, this could be extraordinary as well the next couple of days. This is all about what he says in the Rose Garden. And Carl Weinberg, a great friend of the show as well. I'll just give a comment of his. Now, I have to put my glass on these days because it's either his font is too small or my eyes are too weak. Probably both. Back to the math. The US imported a total of goods over the last 12 months, excluding monetary gold, totaling $2.1 trillion. Take out $450 billion for auto and parts, which has already been talked about. The president would have to tariff everything else. Every single import at 25% to get the kind of revenue he wants as well. So the scale of this is absolutely gargantuan and unprecedented. And I will just say, I was listening to various articles on the drive in this morning, and one person said, the US administration tried this in 1930, and look what happened. Well,
as we're talking about where we're at, don't forget you've seen a pull forward.
Do you want my glasses?
I've actually
look at us two. Look at us two. This is what it's come to on Scorebox.
I have my own, and I've got some numbers to pull up.
We were young. We had eyes that could see for miles, and now look at us. We're ancient.
Now we have matching glasses. I wanted to pick up on.
I bet yours are more expensive than mine.
I'm sure they were. I want to pick up on where we've travelled to, because if you look at some of the data points, Asian markets were preparing for the onslaught of tariffs. So we had a pull forward effect for the Chinese markets where some of the manufacturing numbers have been okay in China so far, but not elsewhere. If you look at the survey data across on South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, that's where you've seen somewhat of a slump. So what happens next? What we've seen from the IMF, and this is before they issue their latest outlook, their update on economic performance this month, they are saying we do not see a recession on the horizon. But don't forget, at this point, we're just talking about Trump's tariffs. We're not talking about the retaliatory tariffs from other countries. If they come into force, and we had an issue the other week where we saw it through the lens of the ECB and for Europe, that if we do get the tariffs from the States, you get a 0.3% slippage. If you see retaliation from the bloc, you get 0.5% slippage. So this is the retaliatory impact. So while there's no recession in sight yet for the global economy, if we do get a series of measures that we can't predict just yet, then do we see some sort of journey towards even weaker growth from here? We're going to push on. Politics. If there's not enough of it around tariffs, let's take you to France, where the French far-right leader Marine Le Pen says she will appeal the ruling of a French court which banned her from standing for office for 5 years, effectively blocking her from running for president in 2027. The former president of the French National Rally Party was convicted of embezzling EU funds and sentenced to 4 years imprisonment, 2 under house arrest and 2 suspended. Speaking to French broadcaster TF1, Le Pen said the ruling was biased.
I didn't
think that magistrates would go this far against our democratic process and would interfere like this in the choice of the French people. Because let's be clear, I am eliminated. But in reality, it is millions of French people who saw their vote eliminated.
Charlotte joins us with more. Charlotte, we were talking at length about what comes next after the Macron era, and Le Pen was poised to have a real go at the presidency. Where does this leave her ambitions now and the far right in France?
Yeah, and just when we thought things were settling on the French political front, after the chaos that we saw last year, and that this happening, a big surprise to many, many people, and Marine Le Pen the first. No one expected the judge to go through with such a tough verdict. And what was controversial in the verdict that was announced yesterday, the judge took 2 hours to lay out the case on why they came to this decision, was that the prosecutor had requested this provisional execution measure, which meant that the ban of running for public office was kicking in now. So even if Marine Le Pen was appealing the decision, and then the appeal was won further down the line, the ban was kicking in straight away, which means she's basically most 90% chances that she's out of the 2027 presidential run. Like, she has a very, very narrow path potentially to have the appeal done before the election, but it's very unlikely, and that's why we're in this situation now. And she had this very combative tone yesterday, talking about how this was a political decision from the judges.
Jordan Bardella
is a formidable asset for our movement, and I've always said this. I only hope we won't have to use this asset earlier than necessary. But in the meantime, I'm combative. I won't allow myself to be eliminated just like that. I will use all the possible routes to appeal. There's a narrow path. It is indeed very narrow, but it exists. I will indeed ask as clearly as possible for the appeal decision to be allowed, so I can be considered to run in the presidential election.
And so, of course, she was talking about her protégé, Jordan Bardella, who's only 29 years old, and whether he is the future of the party if she can run in a presidential election. Of course, he has very little political experience. He is a very popular politician, but, he doesn't have the knowledge of the system like she does. And so now he raises a question what that means also for her party, whether they play this they go full MAGA, because they used to be very much an anti-system kind of party. They moved away from this rhetoric very much, very much under Marine Le Pen. She detoxified the party and she moved towards more cost of living crisis as the center of her campaign, and that worked very well for her. Now the question is, would they revert to being anti-system? And we heard from the rhetoric from her party yesterday, they're very much talking about a system being against them, stopping from trying to run in the election. So that's where we're at now. A lot of people say that this law that allowed the prosecutor to put forward this measure should be retracted, and that it doesn't help, including the Prime Minister François Bayrou yesterday talking about how he's troubled by the verdict. So it kind of opens this page now of making this French political scene that has been so fractious over the past few months, whether that's reopened, a moment of instability going forward, and whether the Rassemblement National, who didn't support some of the vote of no confidence measures against the Prime Minister, whether they're more likely to do so now.
Charlotte, thank you very much for that. Let's get into the conversation with Fabrice Leggeri, who is the spokesperson for National Rally, member European Parliament. Thank you so much for joining us today. Do you want to just weigh in first up on the party's reaction to the legal verdict?
Well, the verdict is a political decision made by the court. It was very clear in the court when the judge said that she had in mind the presidential election, and the judge said she wanted to prevent Marine Le Pen from running for presidential elections because, said the judge, because this would trouble public order. Now, if we look at the facts, we are not talking about corruption. We are not talking about bribery. We are not talking about personal profits. What we are talking about is a disagreement with the European Parliament on how the EU budget, the Parliament budget, should be used, because there were many parliamentary assistants recruited 15, 20 years ago by, at that time, the Front National, that were working both for the activities in the European Parliament, but for other political activities of European members of the Parliament. So the question was how to use the public fund, but there was no corruption. And in that sense, this verdict is totally politically biased, and it's not proportionate. If we compare to, let's say, decisions made by French courts against drug traffickers, against murderers, so it's totally disproportionate, and this shows that it is a political decision. Now, one step forward. I mean, it's also against, this decision is against the rule of law. Because in fact, technically, Marine Le Pen cannot appeal the part of the decision that says that she's ineligible, which means that from now on, she cannot run for any election. So she cannot run for the presidential election in 2027, but she cannot run for another election in case the National Assembly is dissolved again this year.
It's a dramatic turn of events, but let me ask you about the accountability question here, because you say the verdict is politically motivated, but it is an important decision in the sense that politicians must be accountable as well. Do you recognise that? Because if we take aim at decisions like this and just dismiss them as conspiracies, a left-wing conspiracy, a right-wing conspiracy, no matter the verdict here, isn't there an important element of accountability?
Well, there is an element, all politicians are accountable, and this is what Marine Le Pen said. So this is not about recognizing or not recognizing political accountability. But, in this, in fact, procedure, the judge said yesterday that because Marine Le Pen wanted to use her right of defense, because of that, there is a risk that she would reiterate what was wrong in the use of the funds of the European Parliament. And this is totally wrong because, in fact, it means, and this is why I'm saying this decision is against the rule of law, because the judge was saying, in essence, that if Marine Le Pen uses her right of defense, it means she's guilty. So this is completely crazy. This way of reasoning is against the rule of law. So we're not talking about political accountability, which is right, but we're talking about the lack of neutrality in the French justice. And this is why it is very serious, not only against Marine Le Pen and our political party, but this is very serious, a serious attack and threat to French democracy.
Monsieur Léger, you're talking here about a problem with the French justice, and we heard Jordan Bardella yesterday talking about the dictatorship of the judges. Is this dangerous rhetoric at a time where there's a growing distrust in the institutions in France and in other countries across the world as well?
Well, but there are reasons why citizens don't trust justice of their country. And there was the case in the United States as well, that the system wanted to prevent Donald Trump from being elected as president of the United States. And in France and in other European countries, we have the establishment, the system that wants to prevent the people's voice to be elected. So we have the case of Marine Le Pen in France. There was recently a case in Romania where a candidate was banned on running because allegedly, he was promoted by TikTok. So there are in many European countries, and I think in many Western countries, there is a trend to ban and to prevent the people's voice from being in charge of the politics, and that's really a concern.
And if Marine Le Pen cannot run in the 2027 presidential election, do you support then? Do you think that Jordan Bardella, who's only 29 years old, should be the candidate? Does he have the political experience and profile strong enough to actually be the candidate for the Rassemblement National?
Well, first of all, Marine Le Pen will fight. This is what she said yesterday. And we will all support Marine Le Pen in this fight. And I started even yesterday in the European Parliament. There was a debate about democracy, rule of law, transparency, etc. And of course, I used that slot to make members of the European Parliament aware of what's happening in France. But of course, Jordan Bardella, who is the president of our political party, has a lot of experience and support. And though he is young, he has already political experience, and he's massively supported among our voters and also among French people. So the result of the political party, our Rassemblement National in June 24 was outstanding. So we got more than 32% of the French votes. So this is we are political party number one in France, and this is thanks to Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella. So I trust that we will fight to defend Marine Le Pen, but we will also deliver the political fight.
We must leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today. We do appreciate the time. Fabrice Leggeri with us, spokesperson, National Rally member, European Parliament. And also thank you to Charlotte for fleshing out the story for us.
Right, coming up on the show, it's the last day before President Trump's big trade reset, otherwise known as Liberation Day, apparently, with investors, traders, corporates and governments all bracing for impact. We'll discuss next. Plus, OpenA.I closes a $40 billion funding round, making history as the largest private tech deal on record. We'll bring you the details. And we'll be speaking to the CEO of M&C Saatchi as the British advertising firm outperforms its peers in the first quarter. That's coming up at 7:30 British Summer Time. A brief look at the Asian indices, which are trading on the first day of April, mildly in the green in the terms of the Hang Seng, the Shanghai and the Nikkei. The Kospi 1.9% higher. Donald Trump is set to announce the details of his reciprocal tariff policy on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time from the White House Rose Garden. His Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent revealed the details on Fox News. Now, ahead of Trump's big reset, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative has published a list of all the regulations and policies from trading partners it sees as barriers to free trade. The report flags several policies enforced by the EU, including its Digital Services Tax and the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism.
We're in a holding pattern ahead of President Trump's tariff announcement slated for the 2nd of April. Here's where we stand. The US has already imposed a 25% levy on goods from Mexico and Canada that are not compliant with the country's three-way trade deal. There's also a 10% tariff on Canadian energy. Trump has also put a 25% charge on all steel and aluminium imports, and he's hit China with 2 rounds of tariffs in as many months, putting an additional 20% duty on all Chinese goods going into the States. On Wednesday, we expect reciprocal tariffs on America's trading partners, although we're waiting to hear the details. In addition, an extra 25% tariff on countries that buy oil from Venezuela. The US will also lift the pause on additional duties on Mexico and Canada. And just last week, Trump announced he will impose a 25% tariff on all autos imported into the States. Juliana asked BDI President Peter Leibinger for his take on the potential impact of Trump's tariffs on the German economy.
2 impacts. For one, of course, the immediate impact on our exports to the United States, which is our most important export market next to China. That will severely impact the automotive industry. There is no question about that. There is also an effect on GDP that will take place if the tariffs come in and stay in and are even expanded. We are calculating about 0.5 percentage points of negative GDP growth connected to the tariffs. So this is severe. However, I do also think that this is an incredible opportunity for Europe and for Germany. We are at this point the last large economic sphere that has an unparalleled rule of law and liberty as key foundations of their economy. And this can lead, if we hold fast and if we stay true to our beliefs, this can lead to an investment spree in Europe that we have never seen before. So I do think It is an opportunity in such, repeating myself now, and it is an opportunity in such that it is a great wake-up call and can enable us to regain our strength. And I'm very optimistic that this is exactly what will happen and how it will play out.
So at this point, a state of flux, and reports suggest, the Wall Street Journal says that Trump has settled on a plan for the latest batch of tariffs. Others are saying it's still fluid. But for me, what is consequential is the game plan, because there's been so much noise about whether we've got blanket tariffs, targeted by sector, reciprocal. What we're going to see really is the master plan here, and how much of the negotiations up until now have been pure bluff, and how much is a genuine change in bringing manufacturing back to the United States. So I think the devil in the detail might actually give us a glimpse into what the overall ambition is for Trump at this stage.
Yeah, but in the meantime, is he going to break the US economy? Is he going to break the US stock market? Is he going to break the confidence of the US consumer? And nobody knows the answers to those three questions. I think that's the key. Is this the right plan to get America where he wants to get it? If it is, what's going to happen in the meantime? If it isn't, are we going to see a cataclysmic global economic event?
Yeah, the stock market and the economy are two very different things, right? One you can resurrect with very strong language, signing of a pen. The other, if you go in a certain direction, I'm talking about the economy now, it can be very hard to wrestle it back and drag it out of a slump if you start to spiral too far. And we spoke about that for many, many shows about the trajectory for the European economy. If we got too far into the slump, it'd be very hard to resurrect that trajectory and turn it around. So I think this is something Trump has to be aware of. Has he gone too far in terms of that negativity?
Oh, and also, is this a stunningly dangerous policy for a country that has $35 trillion worth of debt? Is it going to basically stop people buying that debt, supporting the US economy, using the reserve currency as the global currency of first choice? So there's a lot of reasons why, if he creates lasting damage with people who have enjoyed trading with America, using American dollars, lending to America, this could create lasting damage where people maybe they turn their back on funding a large part of that US debt. That could be another big problem. Bearing in mind, there's no part of any economist I've seen and their projections that says this is going to get the US current account deficit and trade deficit back on track.
I don't know if it's an understatement to say I think there's going to be a lot of moving pieces this week, a lot of moving asset classes. Just about every trader must be on deck this week, right? Thank you for listening to Squawk Box Europe Express.
For more market moving news, you can head to CNBC.com.
Or join us again on the show with Steve Sedgwick, Karen Cho, and myself, Arabi Lekumete, weekdays on CNBC.